Welcome to the Strong for Life podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Shea, and today I'm joined by Ronan O Brien. So I met Ronan, I think, back in 2015, and he's been doing some incredible work over the last few years. So really excited to jump in and get him to tell more about his story. So Ronan, why don't you start with a bit about your background and how you got into doing what you're doing today?
Hey Connor, thank you for holding this space, and hello to everybody. I'm Ronan O Brien. I'm a Limerick man in Ireland, and over the past number of years, a lot of my story starts with wanting to be a young rugby player, and moving to wanting to be recognized and be of note, be successful from that perspective. I had an injury at 18 years of age, and I broke L4, L5 in my lumbar vertebrae. So without any real focus on how to manage that, I just went into a gym myself and took a few tips and did the best I could. I went back playing, and at 22, 23, and just to give you an idea from a rugby perspective, when I stopped playing, there was no lifting in the line out. And when I went back playing, you were allowed lifting the line out. So it was quite a number of years ago. So that's 97, 98, 99, around that time. And I did okay. I started coming back. I played senior with UL Bohemians, and I went off for a summer to coach the University of the West Indies, which was great fun. And I broke my collarbone. I got spear tackled just before I left and broke the collarbone. And I came back and I was trying to rehab again. And at this stage, I'm 24, and I'm like, my back still isn't right. I have a collarbone injury now. I knocked it on the head, basically. But with that really went my whole focus of what I was going to do with my life. And so kind of left me in going from job to job, or to use the word, the doldrums for a while. And all the time, just not really fully rehabbing or understanding the process of getting back stronger after the injury, still mostly from the spine point of view or the back point of view. So after a while, and right up into my 30s, then I had always been health minded or gym minded, but I did a course, and I went up to, I actually started working with the Aduco gym, which was something I didn't stay very long at, but in Galway. And then I went out on my own, and so that's kind of early 30s, moving on then to strength and conditioning. And I had a wellness, or a corporate wellness, health and wellness gym in Limerick, and that was going quite well up until the lockdown. And that's when I had to throw the towel in, and there's a whole conversation around that as well.
I didn't realize about Aduco. My dad actually had an Aduco gym years ago, and Tony Quinn, isn't it? Tony Quinn gyms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of conflicting ideas around Tony Quinn.
It's so I ended up going to the Bahamas and doing the course there. I kind of, it was suggested to me, and I was probably suggestible at that time because I was adrift, and I had broken up from the then serious relationship, and I was adrift and without purpose, really, as I would look back on it now. And without purpose, I was without focus, and I was just scratching at trying to find what was I supposed to do. And that landed for me, and it was perfect because that's what happened. But that had me up in Galway. I moved to Galway to do that, and then I as that started to roll itself out, I was there for a few years, came back to Limerick and worked with the corporate side of health and wellness.
Yeah. And then that gym was going really well from what it looked like anyway, up until COVID. So do you want to maybe talk about when did the breath work, when did the interest in the kind of alternative sources to just fitness education, when did that all start? When did you start researching in that area?
Well, kind of when I came back to Limerick. So that's 2016, 2016 around then. So I had experienced a breath work, and it was a holotropic style, big breathing breath work, and it really blew my socks off. And so that was my first, say, dipping my toe into breath work. I had quite a profound experience actually, and that was down in Cork. I was tandeming the health and fitness, the corporate wellness, and the interest in alternative nature or all are outside of the box modalities in terms of self-inquiry. And with that, I did that breath work, and I also got introduced to some plant medicine work, and how that then became, again, more layers started to come to the surface, and I started to understand things from a different perspective for myself.
Hmm. Do you want to maybe, what sort of shifts did you experience? Like when you're saying you kind of understood stuff better after those experiences, were there specific kind of thought processes that changed around your how you see things?
Very much from an ego point of view, and very much from a, you know, how I was so tapped into really caring what other people's opinion was. And from an ego point of view, then I was always trying to match up to other people's picture of me, like, 'cause you just want to be liked. And that changed. From my perspective now, and over for the last few years, it'd be none of my business if you like me or not. And once I'm living it from a place of being centered, from being truthful, and not being a dickhead, and people can take it or leave it after that. The experience from the psychedelic point of view was very profound in that area. And it really did shape the next few years of my life, and therefore my life now. So that, I guess, they were the profound experiences, predominantly getting to view myself outside of myself and realize that I was a drop in the ocean, but also the entire ocean in a drop.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. And it's not me, that's not singular to me, that's everyone. And when you treat everybody from that place, you treat them better. And it's just that some people have experienced it and some people haven't. Most people haven't. And a lot of my work now is about working with that reference, not healing anybody, but helping them to be their own healers. So my focus, or my mantra would be that nobody can heal you. You do come across coaches or facilitators or practices that can enable you to and support you into delving in and realizing that you are the answer you've always been looking for. And that's how breathwork really is a transforming and productive area for me in how I teach it.
Mm. Yeah, that's a huge concept, and I think for me to get my head around it, sometimes it's like how do you even begin to understand that, or if you're coming from a place of, I'm just looking at through a fitness lens, we'll say, um, if you want to heal yourself, you need to rehab your injury or whatever, but then having someone to show you or give you kind of some sort of a roadmap is going to make it easier, or it's going to make it quicker. So do you think it's similar in the line of work you're doing now, or is it like, how do you, because people need to know in some way, like what path they're going to be on, or how to, how to navigate things. So is that kind of where the coaching comes in?
I think if you're taking from a rehab and a fitness point of view, that somebody comes to you and the difference is, like, some people are like, I want to lose X amount of weight and I want to have it done next month. And you're like, well, that's not really realistic. And so it's about creating habits. It's about surrounding yourself with proper people. It's about identifying habits that are not serving you and letting them go. And like, there's a slip, there's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, all the way. And again, with rehab, but what's very important for a person to feel is that they can trust the person they're dealing with. They're not being judged every time they come through the door or every time they're in contact, and that the positive recognition is given to the work that they are doing, and not the negative to what they're not doing. And they're very similar in terms of, like, improving somebody's breathing, improving someone's injury or their fitness or their weight loss. But again, to use a word my grandfather used to use, or a phrase, it would be, you don't blow smoke up their arse. You're not telling them lies for the sake of it as well, for the sake of having a paying client. So there's somewhere in that bracket that is, for me, that I find the balance where, somebody trusts you, and they trust you because you tell them the truth, or at least as much as the truth as that's available. You support them in their endeavors to change their habits, to get uncomfortable, but we also need the bookwork and the understanding of how all these processes have been linked, work together, and from a scientific nature as well.
Yeah, let's go into breathwork in a bit more detail. So I think a lot of people will have heard of it. Some people won't have a clue. So do you want to give a real kind of layman's term overview of what it is, maybe how you start doing it, and what would be a good way for someone to kind of start kind of practicing it on a weekly basis if they did want to start doing it?
Okay, and if I go off on tangents, come back and ask me the questions that I've forgotten.
Yeah, sure.
So what is breathwork? So we're breathing on average 24,000 breaths a day, and it's a subconscious thing that we always do, and we have to do it to keep ourselves alive. The quality of that breathing is one of the few things that we can do on a conscious level and consciously engage with our breathing, so that when it becomes subconscious, it's more efficient. It's more efficient, meaning that you're not breathing into the chest, or shallow breathing, or mouth breathing, that you're breathing and using the diaphragm. Your breathing is slow, rhythmic, and your breathing is also very focused, or very, very important on how you recover and how you sleep. So let's look at sleep being, if you can nail your sleep, you're going to nail, I'm giving a percentage, 30% of the problems that you might be facing, if you can get your sleep right. From rehab, from hormones, from recovery, from your attitude, your general energy for life. And breathing is a very important part of how we can get into a deeper brain level of sleep, into that deep sleep stage and into delta. So a lot of people are, we say they go to bed easy, they're able to fall asleep. When they're waking up wrecked. So that's quite a common area where I find people will be like, I go to bed, no problem breathing. I'm like, how do you wake up? Oh, I just can't get out of the bed. I'm like, well, you've been asleep for 7.5 hours. Do you not feel replenished at all? So there's quite a number of aspects, from the circadian rhythm to the arcadian rhythm, to where that is, to the melatonin release, to the stress you're bringing to bed, to the phones you have on, to the TV, to the negative conversations they might be having, or from holding on to trying to control all the stresses within the day, and they're keeping you awake thinking of them to the day after. It varies for different people, but if I always come in and help people focus from a clinical breathwork point of view on their sleep, and if they can get their sleep right, there is a greater bandwidth within their energy and within their nervous system to be able to go and tap into changing habits and, making a wider progress in their lives.
And with the sleep, would you recommend mouth taping or anything like that? That's something that I haven't done yet, but I've seen a few people recommend that for the nasal breathing. What are your opinion on that, or what do you think is a good way of maybe helping people improve their sleep quality?
All things working, and what I mean by that is that they don't have adenoids, or they don't have a deviated septum, and they're able physically to breathe through their nose. Yeah, there shouldn't be a problem taping your mouth. But when they say taping your mouth, the tape that's used, so there's two options on the tape. There's a micropore tape, which is a very light paper tape. And that is something that you can just put horizontally or vertically, whatever is more comfortable, across your lips. And it's also that it's light enough just to suggest to the fascia in the mouth to keep or strong enough to keep your fascia kind of programmed to stay closed, not to open. But if you need to yawn, or if you need to, for any reason, need to breathe through the mouth, it's soft enough that it breaks open and that you breathe. That's one aspect. That's the easiest one to get, and that's in most pharmacies. There is another tape that goes around your mouth and doesn't go onto your lips, and this is available on the Buteco clinic, and it's a Buteco product. Patrick McKeown, one of my mentors, has designed it, and yeah, it works quite well. It goes around the mouth, and for the same idea, and it's used, but it's more used for kids because of the fear of taping your mouth. People use the other option, which tapes around the mouth, but still suggesting to the fascia to keep closed. And when we do that, and we get a habit of doing that, and usually within 2 or 3 weeks, you have trained the muscles in your mouth and your face to stay closed in your sleep. And again, when you're nose breathing in your sleep, you are having a deeper sleep, and you're not waking up, because sometimes when you're breathing through the mouth, it's number one is snoring. Number two is you are drying your mouth and waking up for water. And then when you're waking up for water, you're waking up for toilet. So there's kind of that constant negative cycle that happens from that perspective. They would be the main points around mouth taping. But definitely, if you don't have a nasal problem and you want to try it out, tape yourself during the day and go for a nap and see how it is. That's what I always recommend.
Great. Yeah, something I've been meaning to try. So I think this
now
is gonna
facial hair can be the like a mustache or a beard can be less effective for the stickiness, so there's that as well.
Okay. And for someone who's listening, this is the first time they've heard of breath work, or maybe it's just reminded them that this is something that they want to practice. What would you recommend someone for getting started, how to create like a routine? Or I guess you could maybe start with what would be best for someone starting out and what would be kind of optimal for someone who wants to really get the most out of this practice.
Well, they've got to link into why they're coming. Are they coming for meditation, breath work? Are they coming for that self-inquiry? Are they coming because they can't meditate and breath work might be another option around meditation? Are they anxious? Are they working with depression? Are they working with physical pain? Are they getting over some impairment in their respiratory system? Have they like damaged ribs or scarred diaphragm or long COVID or asthma? So there's so many. That's a wide question. Basically, is what I'm trying to get at. So it's identifying why you're coming, and then why you're coming. Then for me, I would then be able to say, oh well, this kind of breath work or these kind of exercises is what you're looking to do. So from the Buteyko point of view, if you have looking to strengthen your respiratory via like you used to smoke or that you have asthma, that there are certain breath holds and techniques. For example, you would breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, hold your breath on empty and walk 10 steps until you feel a difficulty, a comfortable difficulty in your urge to breathe. And you train that until you can do 12 steps and you do 14 steps. And you start creating a fitness in your lungs to do that. But all the time, it's about dancing in and out of the comfort zone. You got to get, like anything, you got to get out of the comfort zone for it to really register and work.
Okay, perfect. So like if it was someone who, let's just say they feel a bit stressed, overwhelmed, would be recommending that as their kind of first way to go? I mean, they can kind of do that when they're walking around.
Well, yeah, that's what you can do walking around or at a desk. Sorry, not at a desk, but nasal breathing at a desk. And there's a couple of the number one I go to for helping people for the quickest, and I can do this exercise with you here, is and it's from the Andrew Huberman podcast. You're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And what he does is, and he's like, he's just a science head, like, and so what the exercise that he does is that sharp inhale from the nose into the belly, and then the remaining part of that inhale then moves up to the chest, so it's slowly out through the mouth. And you're looking for 7 or 8 seconds minimum exhale through your mouth. So again, that it's into the belly, sharply through the nose, into the chest, and slowly out through the mouth. So it'll sound something like. So what that's doing is that, yeah, it's activating into the diaphragm, it's activating the lungs, but it's like the alveoli in the lower parts of the lungs, they get stuck together, and what that sharp inhale gives that air sac it stops it from sticking and makes it buoyant, and from there they're how the oxygen move into the blood. They are the focus points, so real deeper down into the lungs. So again, in the conversations when people are chest breathing and they're not breathing low, they're out of breath. They're just in that shallow breath, and in a shallow breath, anybody who's hears me speaking about this can just put their hand on their chest, and if they're fast breathing in and out of their chest to some degree, they're not breathing deep. And if you're not breathing deep, there is a very strong likelihood that you have a anxiety difficulty in your body, because breathing in the chest is a sympathetic response, which is a fight or flight response. Like that's when you're driven, that's when you're alert, that's when you are ready to go and jump a wall, for example. But we're not out in the wild anymore. So now we have emails, now we have family members, now we have all these, car traffic, etc., financial. So you can still have your body programmed into breathing low because you've been in stress for so long that your nervous system now believes that you are always in the sympathetic response. And if you are always in sympathetic response, that's how you will get a chronic anxiety. And it's one of the ways how you get chronic anxiety, and that's just from lifestyle stress that is not managed, and you don't have a practice that helps you to regulate your nervous system. Tai Chi, breath work, yoga, or hill walking, for example, they're always the ones I would use. And you are, again, painting that mental picture of sitting, watching Netflix, not eating great, kind of folded over on the couch, and your chest breathing. And, it's a pretty normal state of living for a lot of people. And it very much leads to anxiety in the body and obviously a poor respiratory functional system.
Yeah. I think it's a much better entry point for, I'm not going to say most people, but like if you start trying to meditate and you're extremely agitated and wound up and anxious and you're not breathing correctly, I think it's very difficult to sit and it feels very uncomfortable. So I think breath work is a much better entry point for a lot of people, I find, because there's something kind of physical to focus on versus just kind of panicking about maybe how much noise there is in your head. I'm sure you're going to feel the same with breath work as well at the start, but I think it's a bit more, there's more to focus on than just sitting and being like, oh, I'm doing it wrong, or, what am I even meant to be doing here?
Meditation is difficult because, we don't go to a Zen location. We're usually trying to do it at home, and, there's something happening or not, and then your thoughts are around you. But the same thing can happen in breath work, but at least you've got a focal point to come back to all the time, which is your breath, which is, and obviously I'm going to mention what I do on a Wednesday night, which is the guided breath work every Wednesday night via Zoom. So people do it from their own homes, and they forget, and then I remind them, and they forget, and I remind them, and they might forget 50 times, and I remind them 50 times. And that's just how the narration is kind of structured into the process. And they go, oh yeah, sorry, I was holding my breath, or oh yeah, sorry, I was often attention in a distraction. So a lot of people find that so much more easier, so much more beneficial, because one, that they're breathing deeply, fully. There is and again, at the start, I would do like small exercises into body scanning and humming, or nasal or vagal toning, so that people feel safe. People can and feel safe to be able to receive even just words, even just a meditation that's guided. There's so many kind of intricacies about how people put up their walls, and I would have come through a lot of experience in having to kind of word things in a way that allow people to trust and move into that parasympathetic ability of rest, recovery, letting go. And it's in the parasympathetic when you feel safe and you feel trusted and you feel relaxed and physically, mentally, emotionally. That's when the nervous system goes, oh, finally. Now you've been holding on to this for so long. So we're gonna leave it go. And very much in an emotional bracket. And it's called trauma release sometimes. But it's just I like to describe it as imagining that you're a bottle and this is your nervous system. I'm holding a bottle up to the screen for anybody who's just listening. And it's gone up to the top, and it's like that's where the stress, that's where the anxiety, it's all bottled up. So with breath work, we can come down a couple of inches and put a little overflow hole into it. And then the water or the tension drains down to that flow hole, that overflow. So you've got a little bit more space, we'll say in this term, in the top of the bottle. And from there, from having more space, you're like, oh, I'm able to sleep better. I'm able to communicate better. I have a less reactive response. Now it's going to fill up again because that's what happens in our day to day. And we're still dealing with the problems or the systems that are creating the stress, pressure, etc. But as a practice, you start lowering and lowering your that overflow hole until, and preferably till it's at a state where it's right down in the bottle, and you've done a practice, and your practice is that you are turning up, either practicing a couple of minutes a day or at least a big session once a week. And from there, where you were 9 out of 10 in the stress, and the stress is in the body, the overflow and the practice of your breath work has now brought it to 6, 5, 4, 3, and hopefully down to 2 and 1, where you have now a space in your nervous system to, 1, cognitively function better, 2, physically perform better, recover better, and 3, get to make decisions for your life that aren't based from a place of fear or anxiety, and you get to make them from a place of safety. And when you make your decisions from a place of settled and safety, they are always better decisions for you.
Yeah. I want to talk about letting go a bit more detail, in particular around the type of work you're doing now versus personal training, group training. You're probably dealing with a lot more vulnerabilities with people, or things are maybe coming up, as you said there, like when you create space, then it gives if you're not completely wound up, then things can come up. So how do you navigate that if stuff does come up and people are coming to you with specific issues? Or do you ever feel like you need to refer people out, or how do you set boundaries for your own energy and for your own abilities, I guess?
Well, to go back to the first question, when people come with, people don't even know what they come with sometimes. They just, I'm going to try this. I've tried Reiki. I've tried whatever. I've tried various different things. I'm going to try this. I heard there's good reports on it. And so I spend the first 20, 30 minutes of just talking to them as a person, seeing them as a person, not seeing them as a patient or a client. And I want to hear some bits about their life. I want to hear about their relationship with their parents on a level that they're ready to discuss.
I was just going to say that's a pretty loaded question to start with.
Well, it's not. It's usually. Well, the question would be something like, and they might not want to share that, and that's okay. But usually, if they do, then that door has been somewhat unlocked for them going into the breath session. What was your childhood like? I.e., were you bullied? i.e., did you move a lot, or did your parents have a strong or relationship, or was it disorientated, or fractured at home? Um, did you lose a close member of the family early in your life? And usually it's early in your life because that's when the printing into the nervous system is most strong. And they would have kind of mentioned, or even if they didn't talk about it to me, they've registered something in their head, usually, not always. And from then, when they go into the breath work and allow themselves to calm, to feel safe, it will represent the energy will represent in the body to be ready to be let go. And it might be emotion. It's usually emotion, crying and tears or sobbing. And because we have a society that frowns on that, or thinks of that as a weakness, most people want to shove that back down again. They're like, I don't want to cry. I don't want to, I don't want to go into that place of vulnerability. And my coaching is to see that in their breath, and then help and reassure them that it's okay to go there. It's safe to go here. We're just taking off one layer. And if we're ready, we're going to take off the next layer. We're not going to rip off the whole bandage and plasters all in one go. That's not what happens. Not in this type of breath work anyway. It's a more gentle approach. It's more staying in the parasympathetic and allowing what's ever evolving and moving through energy wise in the nervous system to find that overflow key, as we talked about, and just guide it into that so that it's let go. And so that's how it would map out at the start. And people with severe trauma, I mean, like real hard trauma, that's locked down, because the nervous system and the body feels that if that's let out, that's like reliving a war again, or reliving something that is extraordinarily painful. And they've compartmentalized, maybe through different therapies, to put that into a place where when it starts to represent, they have somewhere to go, like cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, and it's locked into this key or this compartment, and that's where they put it. My teaching and from my understanding, I'm like, they're all amazing. They are all amazing, and talk therapy and psychotherapy, they're all amazing processes into helping someone understand, navigate, and figure out how they move through it and out of it. But at some stage, it's still in the body, where they've cognitively corrected and compartmentalized where they need to converse with themselves around the negativity, around the energy, around the trauma, around the problem, but it's still in the body. And I would often talk about how the nervous system is like an iceberg. 1/3 is above the water, and we can cognitively manage and kind of move through those areas with different techniques or different management systems. And then the 2/3 are down in the body. And the great book from Basil van der Kolk is The Body Keeps the Score. Right. And how your traumas, your pains, the big falls off the bike, the big injuries, all those things, car crashes, they're held in the body. And they're held in the body through the nervous system and in the tissue and in the fascia and in the organs. And breathwork has a very profound way of allowing people to come down into those areas, feel them, let them go by a couple of percent, by 50%, whatever they need, whatever way they can. And if we trust that the body knows, the body will let go of what is safe to let go. And it's really about feeling safe. It's really about trusting your body. It's really about feeling of that vulnerability, although is frightening, is where your power is. And there's quite a different few tangents of conversation around that statement, you know.
Yeah, do you want to go into that in a bit more detail? Maybe about, I'm not really sure, I guess navigating it if you wanted to start doing work with related to trauma, or maybe something that you feel that you haven't addressed.
So first and foremost, I would say that if you are thinking about breathwork and somebody is a registered breathwork practitioner, that's a good start. Did they do it online? That's important to find out. Because if they did it online, there's a good chance that they haven't physically understood the somatic variances of how something like breathwork is representing in the body and how to see it, support it, and release it. So there is, as breathwork grows into this whole new, like I often call it the new yoga, and it's very kind of like, you know, it's great, and there's a lot of well-meaning people out there adding breathwork to their yoga practices or adding breathwork to their fitness practices or whatever, and they're holding space for people. And it's only going to be a matter of time, in my opinion, that they're going to go, oh shit, this is something that is way above my pay grade. I have no idea that this has come happen. And hopefully, and it might happen for a while, but when it does happen and they don't have the know-how to do it, it's because they haven't had a somatic teaching. And what I mean by somatic teaching is they haven't understood how to support the physical body in a breath pattern, recognize the breath pattern that is and where it's caught. And sometimes if somebody is representing with like this huge tidal wave coming through them, you got to be able to find out on how you can let it seep out instead of, you know, kind of blow out, because that blowout they might crash the car on the way home, for example, or they might go home and forget to take the pot off the you know, there's all those things, because you're quite frazzled in your nervous system after these big things. And being mindful that I'm not putting anybody down as in other practicing. It's and even if they're listening to this and breathwork is of value in your practice and you've witnessed it and you see it, go and learn more about the in-person somatic work, because online just isn't doing that. It can't really. That's my opinion. It's not doing it. And if somebody is going to an in-person breathwork, you know, at least hopefully those people that you're going to are trauma informed, not just from the book work, but from the in-person work. Part of the work we did in the breathwave training was most of the, you know, obviously the anatomy and physiology and the structure of the breathing is you had to know before you came into it, and you had to have done 10 hours of focused breath work prior to it. And the first couple of days is just about you being facilitated in your breath, really feeling and then getting the feedback, so that you've done a huge groundwork yourself. And basically for, you know, kind of 2 weeks, it's 8 or 9 hours training of breathing. You're breathing and being guided, or you're with one of the senior facilitators and you're watching how they see it, and then you move in to start working with other people in the room. And obviously I'm biased, but that's what I did. But it's how I would see it to be most important for people going to breath work.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, I got into yoga back in 2013, 2012. And yeah, as you said, I think breath work is like even though like pranayama is part of yoga, but like breath work is definitely kind of in the West is definitely the next kind of phase of that, it seems. But I think you kind of get a few things happening. Like it's a really positive thing, but then it's also, I think a lot of people are very vulnerable or attracted to this stuff, like to yoga, to meditation, to breath work, to ceremonies, to all that stuff. And then you of course need to be careful if you are in that category about who you're trusting,
Yeah,
who you picking to hold space for you. I think that's a really important thing as well, because just because maybe someone is charismatic or confident doesn't mean that they might be the best practitioner for you to work with. So I think that's the important thing, is like if you're looking to explore this stuff, like make sure you have someone that you can trust, whether it's breath work or I think like in therapy as well, just making sure that you're choosing a therapist that you've trusted, not just some random person, because
yeah,
that can do just as much damage as well.
completely. And to use that analogy again, it's like I always say, go to someone who's doing it full time.
Mm-hmm.
This friend of a friend has done a course for inverted commas, be it fitness, be it weight loss, be it nutrition, whatever. And if you're not living the brand of what you are moving through and what you're doing, what you're trying to share with people, okay, by all means help your friends and family, but you need to be living it to be taking it seriously. And for example, if you're doing breath work but you're really an accountant during the week but you like to do breath work at the weekends, that's not the person you should be going to breath work for. And same with yoga. Just go to someone who's committed themselves to yoga. Go to someone who's committed themselves to rehabbing, to training, and so on. And that they're not living in the part-time worlds because they haven't committed to it. Even though they might know a lot, they haven't committed to it. That would be my experience between fitness, between the various different health areas.
Yeah, just kind of going along that lens. I see it in like I did, Vipassana retreats, and you probably see it in ceremonies or weekends and stuff as well. That excuse me, people might go and they'll say, I'm going to go do this thing for a weekend or a week, this really hard thing or this really challenging thing, and then this will kind of fix all my issues. Do you see that in the kind of weekends as well, or this kind of, I guess, what can you recommend? Because it can feel like it might be a magic pill or magic bullet. I'll do this thing for the weekend, for the week, or I'll take this medicine and then I'll be, then I don't need to do anything. Then I can basically be fixed.
No weekend fixes all your issues. None. Even the most powerful weekends don't fix your issues. We'll say retreats or plant medicine, and how I would describe them is that they're like these street lamps, these bright street lamps on the path. And we're looking for them because the light is dim and we can't find our way, using that as an analogy. And they're spotlights on the path. And all of a sudden we come across the spot and be like, oh my God, I can see for X amount far ahead now, and things make sense. And then you come to the edge of that light again. You're like, oh, I need to do another one. And I need to do another one. And invariably you will find that people who don't do the work and who are just looking for that very Western-esque type of modality, it's just like, I've done this, therefore I should be. I've been to a personal trainer, therefore I should be strong. I've been to a nutritionist, therefore I should be eating healthy. Therefore, I've been to a ceremony, therefore I should be enlightened. It doesn't work like that, It's just, they are amazing. Even breathwork retreats, they're amazing for that spotlight and that really deep and really powerful understanding. But you've got to go away and work at that. You've got to go away and integrate that. And the best way to integrate that is to create and stick to a discipline, into a practice that makes that integration Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and becomes weekly. And all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 months, you look back and you kind of go, wow, I am different. That I am different from that ceremony because I integrated and because I did the work. And the work is catching yourself when you're being a dickhead, or catching your ego when your ego is trying to, tell you lies. As the saying goes, if you think you're enlightened, go and spend time with your family.
Yeah, I like that. Ramdas, isn't it?
Yeah, fuck, you'll really find out.
Yeah.
Well, if you find it easier and easier to spend time with your family, you're doing something right. For me, I have 2 small children, going on 4 and 1 years of age. And God, if I hadn't done a good belly of work before them, I think I don't know where I'd be. Really, it's so tough. It's so tough. I mean, I really have I gotta throw it out, give a shout out for single parents who are raising kids. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
The community isn't there for them. They don't have a shoulder or a partner that they can really trust and support in, and move that financially, emotionally, time-wise, physical-wise. It's all just so hard, and as that, I'm like, I'm trying to work in where I move with my own online business, and I'm, the scaling of it, and the membership of it, and I'm going to have a sliding fee membership based on what you think is fair and what you're earning, and very minimally then will be available for people who can still do the breath work, who find it of use, and the sliding scale will pay for the people that don't have the money to do it. So it'll be the unemployed, and it will also be special prices for unemployed and for single parents. I just think that single parents are overlooked and really are this marginalized part of society. And look, it's 90% female. So it's something I'd like to bring to light in that.
Yeah, we were actually at a wedding probably 3 weeks ago down in Kerry, and I met one of my best friends. Herself and her partner were over from Australia, and we were literally talking about this. We're like, because they will just, one of them will be looking after the baby, and then they'll switch, and it's only a 7-month-old. But we're like, God, can you imagine if you were doing that by yourself? Like, that would be so unbelievably difficult. So yeah, totally. As someone who doesn't have any kids at all,
I know, yeah. I mean, if you had a puppy, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's consuming.
Yeah.
If you have a child, and if that child has got colic or not well or on antibiotics, I mean, it's just the whole. And you're talking about sleep. I mean, it's really, really, because you when your child isn't well, you're basically sleeping with one ear open. Thank the universe, our kids are healthy, but even at that, it's tough. So I think the point I'm making there, if I hadn't done this breath work, if I hadn't created that space moving into this part of my life, I can see why people just hit the bottle. I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see how people just go, I don't know how to self-regulate my nervous system, therefore I need to numb so I can feel calm. and take that overload pressure. And alcohol is one, and overuse of marijuana is one. So yeah, that's how I feel. It's a huge part of addictions. Like, and like, there's a lot of single parents, and their go-to is just, I need to sit down with a glass of wine 5 nights a week. Okay, okay, I understand it now.
But even if you're not a single parent, I think that's like there's a Terence Real has a really good book called I Don't Want to Talk About It. It's for specifically for men. Um, and he says if you're used to self-regulating with something like like alcohol or drugs or whatever, and you take that, it could be work as well. It could be a workaholic.
Yeah. So sorry. That's a broad. Um, I think it can be alcoholism. It can be drugs. It can be porn. It can be, there's quite a few topics in that. And I guess what I'm coming from a breathwork perspective is that if you create balance within your nervous system through some level of practice of breathwork, you're less you're less inclined to fall down those pitfalls.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is in the book he says if you are self-regulating with whatever substance or activity, that's not good for you. Once you take that away and there's nothing to fill it in like breath work, then all of the stuff will come up that you've been shoving down. So I think it reinforces even more having some sort of a practice like breath work, because it'll just keep building more and more and more the more you shove it down. So yeah, just another kind of reason to integrate this into your life.
Yeah, completely. And you don't need to go to a yoga studio. You don't need to go to a retreat center. You don't need to just do it at any particular place and time. Your breathing is always available. And when you commit to it, and when you just give it that little practice, that little bit, and just, it's a medicine. It's an absolute medicine. And like, hopefully, like, from a clinical point of view, when people come to me, I hope maybe to see them 3 or 4 times, and then every couple of months to see how they're getting on. Like, it's if you do the practice, just like if you're doing the rehab for whatever the injury is, if you do the practice, I don't really want to see you in like every week.
Yeah. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions now,
Okay.
because I'm aware of your time. What's something you've changed your mind on recently?
Something I've changed my mind on recently. Does that mean I'm stuck in my ways?
Can be over the last 2 or 3 years as well.
Yeah, I think I've gotten a real, what truth is, how the media has been, especially over this the COVID stuff, especially over putting. I believe that I've changed my mind about how everybody is so focused on what they're saying is the truth. And what I've changed my mind about is that it's not any of my business to try and change it, or to try and tell them, oh, you don't think this, or you don't think that. It is what it is. My time is better used elsewhere. And I've really kind of let go of the banner of kind of flying the flag of truth, I suppose, because it's so perspective based, and it's so bias orientated, even from within myself. But I do like to be around people that challenge that, respectively, challenge that.
I think you made a really good, that last point, like challenge it respectively. And it's interesting. There's some research, I think it's from Harvard, or a well-established school in the US. They said that people who are told that their point of view is wrong still choose to believe their original point of view. So even if you can spend your days like telling people, hey, this is actually the way things are, the person isn't going to believe you anyway. They're going to
No,
stick to their guns. So
no.
it's a waste of energy.
They're going to put you in a box. I mean, like just on the COVID stuff, I chose not to be vaccinated, and I was one of the probably obviously one of the couple of percentages around Ireland who chose not to, and I life was made hard for me.
Yeah.
Life was really made hard for me in terms of like, I couldn't bring my kids to a place, whatever those play gyms. I could go inside and order a coffee, but I couldn't sit down and have the coffee. The bizarreness of it, so I let a lot of that stuff kind of go.
Yeah. Better off.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, who would be your ideal dinner date? Someone you'd love to just hang out, pick their brain for 2 or 3 hours.
Graham Hancock.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I've thought about that. He's just a man that has really, and actually to rephrase it, I would say Graham Hancock and his wife, Sina, it's an Indian name, and how the two of them have traveled around the world so much, have investigated so many ancient stories that regular archaeology and regular history doesn't allow into the books. And he's a man that took so much hate mail in his quest for trying to open the conversation about we're a species with amnesia, and that the human cycle is much older than we currently believe. Anybody wants to go out and check Graham Hancock.
Yeah, he would have some serious conversations for dinner.
His story is also the reason from a Joe Rogan show that I first heard, 14 years ago. It was the reason why he was talking about ayahuasca and how that started me asking the questions into plant medicine. And yeah, so I'd love to have a sit down with him. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for the health of my children.
Right.
Yeah.
If you could wake up tomorrow with a superpower, what would it be and why?
My superpower. Mind reading.
I had a podcast with David Coleman. He's my client, but he's also very well known in Ireland. He's a child psychologist, and he said the same thing, to read minds.
Yeah.
What book or books would you recommend? Maybe one on breath work, nervous system regulation, and maybe one on fiction.
Unfortunately, the books that I read are the kind of books that I need to sit down with a pen and paper with, and they're not kind of like flowing or novel based, but definitely a book that for anybody who is looking to tap in and understand a wider aspect of how they are their own medicine would be Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. That's a good book. Definitely the James Nestor book, Breathe. It's a fantastic book. Really is a fantastic book. And then, yeah, I'd have to shout out for Magicians of the Gods in Graham Hancock.
I was just about to say you're most likely going to be recommending one of his as well.
There's another book as well that I haven't got to yet that I'm meaning to get to. It's about how, and you might know the name of it. It's how all religions are based in psychedelia, and how he's traced them all back to.
This is Graham Hancock, is it?
No, it's not a Graham Hancock one. It's he was on a podcast with Joe Rogan again. Maybe somewhere out there knows it. But it's a book around how he's kind of chronically traced back through so many religions, and the origins can be based in psychedelics.
Very interesting. All right, last question, mate. If you could put something on a billboard where it's going to reach millions of people, what would you put in it and why?
You're already enough. I would put that on, and where will I put it? I would put it in front of every school, something like that.
Yeah, very good. I had a podcast with a guy. His name's Nick Pags. He's a mindset coach. He said the same thing a few months back.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm in good company, so
I'll tag him. In
yeah.
that. Good stuff, mate. So before I let you go, where can we send people? What's the best place to see more about what you're about?
I am most busy on Instagram, Breathwave Ireland. The website is breathwaveireland.com. So and from there you can get the link to the Wednesday nights. The Wednesday nights are the guided breath meditation for about an hour, a little bit over an hour, where there's some very different kind of ways of moving through your breath in terms of the music that's used, the narration, the poetry, and the community is always building. So I was on last night. I had 94 plus people on last night. So yeah, it's building, it's growing, and I, at the start of it, I said I gotta believe there's going to be 1,000 people who want to be on this every Wednesday. Yeah, the feedback is fantastic. If you're curious about breath work in this modality, and especially if you've got a bit of a spiritual flame inside you, log on to or contact me for that link and I'll send it on to you. It's it's currently donation based. I'm moving that in the next 2 or 3 months, but yeah, that's how you find me.
Yeah, I'd strongly recommend checking out the Wednesday night classes. They're amazing. And it's just been awesome seeing it really just grow over COVID. It's been really cool, man. So yeah, really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Great to have you, and you were very good to help me with some of the injuries that I'm still lurking with, and yeah, it's really opening up my ease within myself as well. So thank you.
Great.